Today on the Mr. Maple Show podcast, Matt and Tim interview plant explorer and director of the J.C. Raulston Arboretum, Mark Weathington.
Konnichiwa, y'all, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. We're here at the J.C. Raulston Arboretum today with our good friend Mark Weathington. I'm Matt. I got my brother Tim, and I think we got a good episode lined up for you.
Y'all, we thank y'all so much for listening today. We've got a great one with Mark Weathington, the director of the J.C. Raulston Arboretum, one of my favorite arboretums in the country. It's got tons of Japanese maples. It's famous for its Japanese maples. If you like Japanese maples, make sure you're subscribed on your favorite podcast platform to the Mr. Maple Show. We put out a weekly podcast all about Japanese maples, and it's on YouTube as well. So check us out there, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed because we put out daily YouTube videos on YouTube. Check that out. And remember, you can always shop on MrMaple.com.
So, Mark, we've been trying to make this one happen for a minute. I think you were stuck in Taiwan. We were going to record with you during the Maple Society meeting last year.
Well, actually, Vietnam.
Vietnam that time, okay.
Taiwan, Vietnam, sometimes hard to keep track of where we're
I remember you were going to fly back and present at the Maple Society. We were hoping to catch you then. So this one's been a minute in the making. You're one of our all-time favorite plant people, so we'll just talk about that, I guess.
Sounds good. Yeah, I remember when we first met. It was about this time of year.
It was at the Green and Growing, right?
Green and Growing in North Carolina. Y'all had some interesting ideas, some of them wild, some of them not. And I was like, it'll be interesting to see these guys because I've known a lot of nurserymen, known a lot of plantsmen, and the ones that are over-the-top plant people, I mean, just over-the-top, usually make terrible nurserymen. Usually, because they try and grow one of everything.
Well,
and that's what y'all are doing, and somehow you made it work. I'm not exactly sure, but usually when you gotta dislike plants a little bit usually to actually be successful selling them. But somehow,
I remember we bribed you. We came to the Green and Growing show. I think you were assistant director back then, or maybe brand new here.
Brand new.
And we were like, this guy he'll have all the answers. So we bribed you. We took you out to lunch. We're like, hey, can we please take you out to lunch? I remember the exact conversation because we're like, we have a million questions about graft compatibility, and we're interested in if we graft a different species, how we can affect the scion. So we want to graft the evergreens. Have you ever, you know a lot about evergreen maples? Like we had all these laid out questions. And I remember that dinner. He's like, these guys are crazy. I remember I can see like, okay, he knows we're nuts now.
No, but it was great because you're here in North Carolina with me, so it's easy to follow you. We were seeing each other a lot because y'all were everywhere, always running around. I kind of, I felt like I was there from the beginning and got to watch y'all grow and myself, other nurserymen, we'd all scratch our heads and say, man, they're making it work somehow. I don't know how.
These crazy guys. And we were small. I mean, when we were bugging you, we were literally at tailgate markets back then. So it has been a bit of a change from sitting at tailgate markets to now. But you did know us when we were literally sitting around the tailgate markets reading the 4th edition of Japanese maples or the 3rd edition, and then coming to pick your brain for as much maple information as we could find.
And then the Arboretum to get as much scion as you can.
Oh, we still do that.
This place has always been so gracious too.
It's like the other way.
To be honest with you, it still shocks me when people want to have us do things like present or anything. And you guys were some of the first, like especially you. The Raulston was one of the first places that was like the biggest presentations we'd ever done. And so you guys did give us a lot of our breaks. I mean, I even remember speaking at the J.C. Raulston 40-year anniversary. And I mean, I wouldn't say I felt like an imposter, but I'm looking around the docket there like, man, these are some impressive presenters. I'm really honored you guys thought to have us at that. Like we were just, shocked and humbled and honored. And I appreciate you giving us a chance to be involved in things like that.
Well, that one in particular, that 40th anniversary, you start doing those anniversaries and the first instinct is always to look backwards at what you've done. And we were like, well, we want to look forwards. We don't want to look backwards. That's, we know what we've done. That's not exciting. We want to know where we're going, where the industry's going. And so we brought in a bunch of young folks that we were looking at as the next industry leaders, the ones who were doing interesting, different things, who were kind of forging their own paths in different ways, but we're really going. And so I won't go back and look at the list. I think we made pretty good judgment calls with everybody. I don't remember anybody who's flamed out by now, but yeah, we're coming up on the 50th though. So
we were just shocked and honored to be included. Like, we looked around the room and we're like, man,
so
this is it.
So we've talked a little bit about our beginnings. Mark, where did your love for horticulture begin with?
All right. I wish I was one of those people who grew up, being able to say, oh, I gardened at my grandmother's knee. I, loved plants from an early age. I had no interest in plants. It wasn't that I didn't like plants. It's just I never thought about them. And went to college. Going to be an architect. Decided not to be an architect. Was going to be a business major, which probably would have served me well now. I was a business major for 15 minutes. I went into my first principles of accounting class, and we sat down, and the professor, went through the syllabus and told us what we were going to learn and everything. And he said, if there's anybody in the audience who shouldn't be here, who thinks they shouldn't be here, now's the time to leave. And I threw my backpack on and stood up and looked around. I thought everybody was going to stand up because who in their right mind would stay there? And then I had to slink out. And I had a girlfriend who was in horticulture, and I thought, sure, I'll take a class. And I took a plant propagation class just, on a whim. And I won't say it was the first class, but by the second class, or at least the first lab, I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And actually, I can remember, I hadn't even thought about this till just now. I remember the first thing I'd been in it for a little while, maybe, a semester or two. I told my parents that what I was planning to do when I graduated was open a Japanese maple nursery.
See, I actually knew that about you. You told me that once before. Yeah.
That was what I was going to do. And it just so happened that I got a job at the Atlanta Botanic Garden and realized that that's really what I love, public horticulture. Y'all are a little different than a lot of nurserymen. We already went over that, but y'all like going out and talking to people. A lot of nurserymen don't like to talk to people at all. They're much more comfortable with plants than people. But I really like that, the education part, that mission, the growing plants up larger than, just a 3-gallon size. Not that, I love when people take great pride in growing a uniform product that's excellent. But I really liked kind of the whole public part of it. And so from there, it was destined to be. I lucked into the right places at the right time.
And then you went from the Atlanta Botanical Garden. Did you go directly to the Norfolk Botanical Garden? So
I actually went to finish my master's degree. I'd started my master's degree before I left school. I went to finish it at the Hampton Roads Ag Experiment Station, which had a master's program with Virginia Tech. And I worked for a year at the Virginia Marine Science Museum that had nature trails and things like that. And again, right as soon as I graduated, Norfolk Botanic Garden was looking for a supervising horticulturist. And I got hired and worked there for a decade until I became director of horticulture.
And they have a lot of Japanese maples at that Arboretum as well.
We did. We had some great maple growers that you would know around that area, and we had a great collection. And it's a big garden, and the collection is just in general is spaced out pretty well. And so for 10 years, I was discovering new plants that were there, some weird things that got tucked away in these woodland areas. And all of a sudden I'd be like, wait a second, there's a 40-foot tall cinnamon, camphor cinnamon camphora there, or, and some great Japanese maples. Like you said, a great collection around there.
One of our mentors pretty close there, Elizabeth at Acer Acres, We're twisting her arm to be on the podcast soon. She comes to our area a good bit these days.
Elizabeth was incredibly generous when I was there. She really helped us out with developing our Japanese maple collection.
I give her as much credit as anybody for why we're able to do this. She was probably one of our premier mentors when Tim and I were getting started, and still is. But I mean, if we didn't call her and bug her, we'd probably never made it.
Yeah, she was fantastic for us. And you know, she's one of those nurserymen who would rather be with the plants.
That's why I'm trying to twist her arm to get on the podcast as well.
So how did you end up from there to the J.C. Raulston Arboretum?
Well, so I'm a plant guy, and at Norfolk, it is amazing. If anybody's in that southeastern Virginia area, you should visit Norfolk Botanic Garden. What they're doing there is unreal. It's they're killing it there. They really are. But at the time, the director he wanted a display garden, and I wanted a collections garden. And I was looking for a new job. You know, piece of advice to everybody out there: if you have a job and you and your boss disagree about the direction you're going, find another place, because the boss is the boss. You know, sometimes that's the way it is. And so I wasn't mad about that. I just wanted to leave. And I interviewed and I interviewed and I interviewed. And every time I would withdraw my name. I was like, this isn't the right thing for me. It isn't the right thing. I'll stay in this situation rather than jump somewhere else that's not where I want to be. And lo and behold, the assistant director job at J.C. Raulston opened up, and I applied that day that I saw it open. And 2 days later, my wife called me, and she said, because she was looking for jobs for me too, she said, hey, there's a job at J.C. Raulston at NC State. Isn't that the job you said was your dream job?
That's awesome.
And I said, yeah, I've already applied for that. And it literally, I had said many times, this is my dream job.
Well, if your ideal was you wanted to start a Japanese maple nursery because you already had a love for Japanese maples, and then you go to one of the premier gardens in the country known for having tons of Japanese maples. I mean, J.C. Raulston, I believe, said he wanted to see a Japanese maple from every spot in the garden. And y'all have taken that a little bit further here since.
Yeah, and anywhere you stand, you should be able to see a Japanese maple. Now, sometimes you have to wait for winter to leaves fall off the tree to see through where the Japanese. But yeah, that's our symbol. A lot of the college students, this is where we get to have a good botany lesson and explain that cannabis is palmately compound, while your typical Japanese maple leaf is palmately lobed and not compound. It's starting to get some crossover now because doing a lot of hemp research right back, and hemp may not have all the same properties as cannabis, but it does have the same smell. And so people come in and they're like, yeah, see, I told you that leaf.
we get some videos where we're like, why did that one hit? Oh, I know why the thumbnail looks like cannabis.
There's probably a lot more horticulture students now signing up because of cannabis and hemp.
It is. I mean, it's getting to be huge. Actually, the most recent plant breeder that NC State University hired, who works very closely with us, his previous job was breeding cannabis for a big greenhouse dispensary in Oregon.
That's crazy.
So, Mark, this was your dream job. Tell us a little bit more about why, and tell us a little bit more about the J.C. Raulston here. I mean, a lot of our viewers probably know we talk about the Raulston a lot. We're very fond of this place. It's one of mine and Tim's favorite places on the planet. I mean, probably because y'all were nice to us before we were anybody too, but I mean, not that we are now, but y'all were always, the door was always open here. And so we've always had a special place in our heart to talk about the J.C. Raulston Arboretum.
So I go back to the beginning real quick. J.C. Raulston, Dr. Raulston, came to NC State in 1975. We date our beginning to 76. He had been other places, and he was widely traveled. He just visited everywhere, nurseries, especially. And what he had figured out was no matter where you were, what region you were in, everybody in that region was growing the same plants. He said 90% of the market is made up of the same 40 plants. And his thinking was, who can come into the market if everybody's growing the same thing?
We kind of feel that way too sometimes.
Exactly.
That's kind of why we're so outside the box a little bit.
And so he set about to, in his words, diversify the American landscape. And so he just started bringing in all the plants he could, trees and shrubs, planting them and seeing how they did. And the plants that were good, he would distribute to nurserymen. Plants that had the potential to be good but didn't grow well here, he would send them out to other gardens, other nurseries, and other parts of the country or world. And at a time when gardens were hoarding plants, which still happens, gardens like to be gatekeepers and not let people have the plants in a lot of cases. He was like, why? We can make more. So he would send plants out everywhere. And that kind of thinking ethos still is what drives us. Now, times are much different now. You can go to a big box store, and there is a much greater diversity in that box store than was in a good nursery before. Yeah. So he was successful in some senses, although it's kind of gone up and gone back down in terms of the diversity. I think it's hopefully it's going to come back up. But our goal is still for things to go out. It's plants go out. Information goes out, passion goes out that we put in people, and that's the goal. I'm talking about moving here with my wife. So Norfolk was 155 acres. You could tour by boat or by tram. We came here, and we're only 10 acres here, 8 acres when I started. And we walked around, my wife and I walked around this after I accepted a job. Our house was on the market. We were looking for a new house. And her eyes got big after we had walked around. And she said, "What did you do? I can't believe you left Norfolk Botanic Garden." I said, "No, what you don't understand is impact. This garden has so much more impact than huge gardens across the country, around the world, because we never think about what it is inside our gates. We love to have the cool stuff here, but we don't want to have the only one. I always say it's fun to have the first one, but we don't want to have the only one. So as soon as we can, we get it propagated, we get it out in the hands, not just of other gardens, which is what a lot of gardens do, but in the hands of nurserymen. Because I can send a cool plant to another garden and they can have it. I can propagate a whole bunch and send it to a bunch of gardens and they can have it. I can send it to you guys and you can propagate much faster, much better than me, and get it out to the public. And I feel that way about whether it's a new Japanese maple or it's a rare endangered maple or anything else. Some people think that only the experts can be the ones who have the rare and endangered things. I'm like, there are people who are experts at propagating plants and making more of them. And if it's rare and endangered, put it in their hands, the nurserymen, so they can make more of them and get them out. And that's a very, very controversial I thought to have for a garden.
Normally there is a little bit of gatekeeping going on sometimes. And, as a nurseryman, I'm always on the propagation, his preservation team. I'm like, hey, send me some signs.
I know a particular arboretum in the Northwest, and Matt and I saw a cool plant there. And I said, hey, any chance I could get sounds of this? I don't think there's many like this. And he's like, well, we'll have to take it in front of our committee and then in front of this, in front of this.
Never happened.
And it's just gates after gates after gates trying to bar people from being able to produce stuff. And it's like, if someone produced that, then the public could actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's such a different line of thinking. And I think Matt and I are just so lucky to have the J.C. Raulston here.
It's such a resource.
That open mentality of share plants with people, share plants with nurseries, let people understand how to, get these plants out there.
And
because otherwise,
hopefully it's reciprocal. Like I've realized I sold too many of something and like, oh, good, we donated one to the Raulston. It's here. Like there's something, there's a plant here. I was just talking to Sean. We're walking around outside and I'm like, I don't have this anymore. And I've sent this here. I'm glad this is here. I didn't realize we were out of it, but hey, look at this. We found a source where we donated one 10 years ago. And
that's just it. We try and keep track of where we give plants to, who we've given plants to, because there are times we want to go back and find them. There's a red bud that I thought was lost to cultivation that we had introduced, a Mexican red bud called Bonita.
Yeah.
Beautiful plant, small leaves, really rippled. And, I wrote about it. I was writing about something in our newsletter, and I put that in there if anybody knows. And lo and behold, the director actually of the art museum, who was friends with JC had given him one. We got cyanwood back, got it grafted.
That's awesome.
And his died, his died after that.
Right.
So we propagated and grew it and gave him another one back. It goes around full circle.
So you've got maples all across this garden. There's obviously a real prominent maple in the White Garden, and it's an very, very old tree. I mean, it's one of the larger Acer palmatum dissectums on the East Coast. I mean, it is giant. It is beautiful. Right there where people have weddings all the time in the White Garden. Besides, that, and when you drive in the other large lace leaf, what would be some of your favorite maples here at the J.C. Raulston?
All right. Well, y'all probably know this because I talk about it all the time. I'm going away from Japanese maples, but I love the evergreen maples.
We had you present at the Maple Society meeting in D.C. on that because we do too. So, I mean,
we're lucky in that we're just warm enough to be able to do some of these things that are often considered subtropical, but we're finding a lot of them are quite hardy. Mm-hmm. And they make fantastic trees. We've got one Acer fabrium that has been here longer than me. So it's been here 20 years or so now, I think. The coldest winters we've had, it's had some burnt tips. It'll drop some leaves, but it's gorgeous. It is the prettiest flowering maple we have. Those red flowers on it. I don't know if you've been out here in the spring when it's flowering. It's insane. And then the red samaras after that. It is gorgeous. Now, I will say we have another Japanese maple, an old one, that's just the green leaf Japanese maple. It's just the species. I shouldn't say that, just the species.
right.
And every time I see it in the fall, every time I see a beautiful one, and that was one of the first Japanese maples I got to know well because I worked at a nursery up in Western Virginia, and they had a beautiful one in the back garden, and beautiful form, and had a trunk that was probably 12 or 14 inches in diameter. And in the fall, it's like there is nothing better. I love the species, a green leaf Japanese maple. I think they're underappreciated.
I mean, they're bulletproof for one, right? I mean, It's like
that was great. So when I worked at this nursery, and there's no better education than working in retail, to learn about plants, because people always ask you all these bizarre questions, and you have to know it. At that point, longer ago than I like, Japanese maples were considered these very delicate things because they look delicate and they're beautiful, and you could only get them from the West Coast, and it was expensive as anything to ship out here, and they were grafted, and there weren't many grafted things, and so you would pay even more of a premium than you do now for these plants. And so since they look delicate and they were so expensive, obviously they must be hard to grow. They must be easy to kill. And they're not. They're pretty darn bulletproof. You have to really try. Except for there's some wild ones out there that are really still command a real premium, and that's because they do want to die.
Right.
And plant collectors do love plants that want to die.
It's funny how that works. Like I could sell more of some of the finicky ones.
Right.
There's ones I refuse to offer, and those are the ones I get asked for the most.
Sure. Because if you do grow it well, hey, you really accomplished something.
And if you do grow one and one dies, you want to get another one.
Yeah.
it's just
Never in battle.
Yeah.
You talk about the favorites. There's some old ones that I really like. When I started, Bloodgood was the purple leaf Japanese maple, is basically the only one you could get. And I've had a love-hate with it. There's a lot of people who are not growing Bloodgood. They're growing seedlings that are not as good. And Bloodgood's a much better plant than it's sometimes given credit for.
Oh yeah.
But if I were going to grow one, kind of standard burgundy leaf one, it would be Margaret B. I really like Margaret B.
Good choice.
It might be its sighting out here in that. At certain times of the year, the light hits it just right, and that's when it grabs my eye. But I do really like that plant.
It has a real nice deep color to it. It's one that you don't see that often in the nursery trade. I fell in love with that plant as well from walking around here. Whenever I was at the UNC Chapel Hill, I did some undergrad at UNC Chapel Hill. I would walk around the J.C. Raulston Arboretum.
Well, you volunteered, or I think you signed up.
I tried to. I never got contacted.
Like, keep that Chapel Hill boy over there.
It must have knew I was wearing a UNC shirt or something. But Margaret B., I fell in love with that plant here, and they've got a gorgeous one at the Dawes Arboretum as well. And every time I see that plant, it stands out for sure. It's really typically has a pretty good fall color as well.
Now, one that we pressured you a little bit with was that Acer lavagatum Honglong, because that's one you shared with us very early on. And we're like, you've got to make this a cultivar. We're like, we're going to call it Mark Weathington unless you do something with it.
Mark, where did Honglong originate?
So Honglong actually originated in eastern, kind of southeastern China. I was there with a friend of mine from China, Liu Gang, who's amazing plantsman, used to do the seed collecting for Shanghai Botanic Garden, which was pretty cool. And the reason I met him, he came here to visit J.C. Raulston Arboretum because when he worked at Shanghai Botanic Garden doing the seed collecting, that's when J.C. was here. And J.C. would get so many seeds from their seed distribution that he wanted to come see me. He wanted to come see the garden because he was amazed. And I got to know him really well. And we went to, there's a place called Tianmushan, not far outside of, Hangzhou, it's a little south of Singapore, and it's this beautiful mountain that's protected. It's where the Chinese allspice Calicanthus chinensis is found, and some other great things. And we were outside actual Tianmushan at a hotel right there, and they had this evergreen maple there, and so I collected seed from it. Didn't really think anything was going to come from it. There wasn't anything great about that tree, and we sowed it out. And it just so happened that one that we really grew on and takes on these great burgundy tones in winter, comes out in new growth, kind of almost silvery, and has been very hardy for us. We've been growing it for 14 years, I believe, outside, and has been rock solid, great form. Propagates, good
bark interest. People are often shocked to find we'll graft that one onto palmatum.
Yeah.
And they're like, what on the heck? Because that doesn't look like anything your average customer is going to look at as in section palmata or working with palmatum.
So, I got this interest in evergreen Japanese maples and started looking at them, and I hadn't really looked at what section they were in. See, I don't do that because I'm not grafting them or breeding them that much. None of them with maples. And so I was assuming there was going to be, section levigatum or section oblongum or something that was for these evergreen maples, and go to find out that there's section palmatum that
Fabry, right there as well. So Mark, you've got so many stories of exploration and finding all these cool things. Is there one that got away? Is there the one that kind of, it was there, but it just slightly slipped through the fingers?
Well, there is one that I got, but killed.
Oh no!
That gets me. It's Acer tonkinensis, and I've grown that a couple times. Gulf of Tonkin. It's Vietnam and Southeast Asia, kind of a plant. But the southern Vietnam form has it. Well, so first let me go back. It has big star-shaped leaves, super glossy. I didn't realize it was a maple when I was first looking at it, even though it has that palmate leaf. It was so perfect and glossy, and big, that it just didn't look like anything I had really seen as a maple. Gorgeous. So I go to it, and it's loaded with seed, and I'm under it, like getting seed, and I look up, and the backside of the leaf on the southern form is dark burgundy.
Oh, cool.
I mean, it was amazing. It had nice stout stems. It was a real kind of beefy plant. Almost none of that seed was any good, and what we did get died at about 25 degrees. So but it kills me. I can still picture this plant. It was so spectacular.
So you've done a lot of plant exploration kind of trips. What are some of your favorite places you've traveled to? If you want to list some cool places you've been, and do you have any stories about some of your more adventurous? I love the plant explorer side of it. Like, I think it's so adventurous, and I think it's something that, especially our customers from a retail nursery, they don't know that world. So it's super interesting. Whenever I get somebody like you in here, I love to talk to them about that kind of exploration part of it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really important, the exploration, and that's in this country and out of this country. We do work with a big group working on some of the new species of witch hazel in Texas and Alabama and Louisiana, Hemp ovalis and magnolias. But we also go out of the country, and maples are, that's one of our symbols. So that's one we're always looking for. I just started working some in Vietnam. I really like that. Vietnam is a little bit perhaps marginal for us in terms of growing outside. You got to get up really high, but they have those great evergreen maples. I love China. It's so big. It's when you say China, it's like saying the U.S. There's so many different areas. One area that I've only been to once is down south. It's the Nanling Mountains. And something people don't realize with China is instead of having their mountains north-south, they have them east-west. So the central part gets very cold winds from the Himalayan plateau, and it tends to be drier and colder. When you get south of that, it really becomes subtropical. But right there on the top of those Nanling Mountains, you get the really cool stuff to me, where the subtropical goes into the warm temperate, and you get Stewardias and maples and just all this diversity and species that you've never heard of. And it's always a gamble because some things will live and some things won't. But that's one of the most exciting places I think I've ever been. I love Taiwan. It's like China, but China light. It's a little bit easier to deal with. Japan. I know y'all have been there, visited.
There's
some
a
of the
lot of
same
great nurseries in Taiwan too. They're really into. I mean, that's an area I would love to get into more.
Yeah, and Taiwan is a pretty easy place to make connections. In the cities, there's a lot of good English there. I don't know the nurseries there as well like I do in Japan, but I've done wild collecting in Japan as well, which was great. And I had to cancel a trip this past fall. We were going to go, and our main goal was to go up and get Acer niponicum, which is, I've killed that before more than once. It's a little tough, but I wanted to if I get a bunch of seed, I could sow it all out and I could grow it. Maybe I'd find one that was a little better for the Southeast because, it's growing up really far north. But that was a top for me.
Well, anytime you're going back to Japan, that perks our ears up. Tim and I, one of the things we benefited from a ton, it's just your graciousness. One year, we heard Taka Kobayashi was here speaking, so we drove down on a whim from Western North Carolina. Well, Mark takes us out to dinner with Taka, and then we go on a tour of the Arboretum here, and that's a relationship that you helped foster, that we were able to, visit him in Japan multiple times and spend a lot of time with him because of you opening that door for us there. So that was great. And, it's kind of funny. We were talking to you, and we were talking about going into some of the Japanese Alps and looking for japonicums and things like that. We were out there literally, in the middle of the woods, and we're Googling what animals are here. So I noticed recently they're having a ton of like black bear issues in Japan and some of those regions. So like next time I'm back, I'm gonna be a little more careful. There's a lot of black bear attacks. I'm sure you've getting in some areas where it's like some of those subtropicals, you might be running into some tigers, some sloth bears, maybe even, I don't know.
Well, now we have had our guides show us jaguar prints. They don't seem to be terribly concerned. So I don't either. There's an area in China that I'd really like to go to. But I talked with somebody who is from that region, and they said, "Oh, you cannot go to that area. It's right on the Vietnam border." You said, "Can't go to that area. That there are so many landmines still there." They said it's not safe. So we've done it on the Vietnam side up to the Chinese border, but haven't gone that other side, and probably never will because
I think
we screw things up there.
Yeah, I think your travel's just so fascinating, and that aspect of preservation and collection, and it's just so interesting. I love that part of just horticulture, and I think it's something that, especially from a collector nursery, people don't get that side of it. They don't even know about that part of horticulture.
Yeah, and what I find exciting, and I'm not sure how much y'all are doing this now, but I have seen it some in your catalogs. Is we collect the same species maybe in various areas, and we always keep a collection number with it, and that's how we can follow it. Either that or put a cultivar name on it, like Honglong. But I think it's really interesting, and from a conservation point of view, it's great to have these different collection numbers, because I grow my garden, same species, but collected different areas that grow very different. And that's really exciting. We trade plants. So I get a lot of Japanese maples, or I'll say trident maples. I'm into trident maples. Give me all these trident maples. And, bring them down. And then, a lot of times what I give back are some of these species that we collect in the wild.
Oh, I love it. We've actually offered, we need to get back to it a little bit. We used to call it the Go Wild collection. And this was our way of kind of toeing the water for your average homeowner. Like, we sell them on the story a little bit. So like, this is something that Mark may have collected on a trip, to Taiwan, and
braving the jaguars.
Yeah, we'll totally play into like he fought a dragon, but like but giving them that little bit of adventure to it, it makes it special in the garden too. And then it also is just a different set of genetics. So our people love learning about, how Lavigatum looks different than Japonica. It's a totally different looking thing. And I think we need to be doing more of that again. I mean, we love doing accession numbers and kind of keeping all that stuff.
And that's the reason why I love Lavigatum Honglong, because it is a selection, a cultivar of one of these species. And so it begins people to realize there are some cool traits in some of these other species. And when you start finding more selections and great aspects to these species, a lot of collectors start to begin to appreciate the different maple species as well.
Well, while we're telling them, Mark, how much we owe him, it was at the J.C. Raulston grafting class we were teaching that we met Letty Munger and then introduced the cultivar Gold Digger. It was through Mark we made connections with Dr. Keith and collected the seeds that became Hot Blonde. That's a popular introduction of ours. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you've helped us with over the years. It's really came to fruition as big hits for us down the road too.
Well, I mentioned what we do here and that sharing that passion, that knowledge. And part of that is providing those connections. And it's something I didn't appreciate when I first got here. But the number of people I talked to over the years where they would talk about, oh, JC, told me this. They'd have these memories. And I'm looking at what JC did as part of the Arboretum. And I've realized, hey, this is how I can kind of pay back all the people who did that for me, is, try and connect people. So I'll have interns or horticulture students here at NC State who will tell me that they're going to a wedding in, outside of Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, west of Chicago. And I'll say, oh, well, hey, you got to go to the Morton Arboretum there, Lyle, was it Lyle?
Yeah.
I think it's the city, but west of Chicago. You got to go there. Let me send an email to a couple of the folks that are there. I know the curator, I know the plant breeder,
right.
I know the director of horticulture. Let me send them a note and say, you're going to be there. We got this really keen former intern who's going there, and they'll show you around and meet you. Or, I do that a lot. Or I'm going to England. I'm like, okay, well, go stop by Krug Farms. We had interns. Mm-hmm. We send a couple interns every year or so to the Chelsea Flower Show. I got in touch with some friends of mine, Krug Farms, who are everything they sell is wild collected, amazing nursery in Wales. And I said, hey, I've got these students coming over. Do you think they could visit you? They said, well, actually, we're doing a display at Chelsea Flower Show, one of the big outdoor displays. Mm-hmm. Would they be interested in helping us?
Oh, cool.
And I said, well, yeah. And so we sent these two students, and they spent 3 days building one of these Chelsea Flower Show exhibits that you have to be invited to display those. The Queen comes out before it's open public to see them. And they got this experience. And one of them went on after he graduated to be a horticulture teacher in a high school here in Goldsboro, North Carolina, a pretty rural place. This is a kid who, what horticulture means and what he can get to the students is so much bigger because he had this experience of going to England, but then also had this experience, at the Chelsea Flower Show, which is, I'd love to have that
What
experience.
A chance of a lifetime. Yeah. That's the kind of connections, they're so valuable. I could go on with a list of millions that you've just helped us with. What's a great way for people to follow you, to get involved in the J.C. Raulston Arboretum? maybe to become a member here at the JC Raulston, or volunteer or donate, or all of the above?
All of the above. Yeah, we're part of NC State, but we're self-supported. So we do rely on memberships and donations and those kinds of things. And, it's interesting. We all learned how to Zoom over the last few years. And so we started doing a weekly live, 3:00 Eastern time on Wednesday. Every week we do a program. And we were getting people from all over the place on these, and they were becoming members. And so, well, what can we do for those? So we actually instituted a new member benefit at certain levels where we'll send you seed. We send a list out, and I mean it's a long list of cool stuff, and members can get that seed as a way to connect with those. We have members in 26 states, so it's all over the place. If you're more local, we'd love to see you out. We have a YouTube channel that we'd love you to check out. We probably see some of the same guests that these guys have, but we do a lot of hands-on. How do you do it? What's the time of year to do? We have conversations like this with interesting folks. So we do all of that. And I'd say, we'd love for you to be a member. But I would say wherever you are in the country, there's a botanic garden, arboretum, public garden near you, and they need support. Be a member of whatever one it is. If you're watching this or listening to this podcast, people, you love plants, and those botanic gardens really need that support is critical for all of them.
Well, this is one of my all-time favorites here. I'm quite fond of this place. The collections are incredible. I mean, of course, we talk about the maples, but there's so many great collections here. Conifers, herbaceous plants. I mean, it could go on for forever. You can literally come to this arboretum 20 times and focus on completely different plants. There's whole followings online.
I still do that people. Sometimes.
There's whole followings online for people who just come here on their lunch break and take pictures, right? I mean, it's that many plants here. Like, this place is historic, but it's also got so many plant collections that, I mean, I see something new every time I'm here, and I've been here hundreds of times.
And unlike some other gardens, we do cut down things pretty often because we're still evaluating plants. And
sometimes I'm like, oh no, not that one.
I know. It's always somebody's favorite tree.
I'm going to come hug it and chain myself to the maple.
But we always have to, we have to add some new ones. And you say that, except I've said this to you a bunch of times, you guys, and I'm going to make good on it one of these days. I need to send you a list of all of our Japanese maples to kind of evaluate. That's what we do. People look to us as experts, but we go outside to the experts and say, all right, what should we get rid of? What isn't really the cream of the crop? What are we missing in terms of what's new in form and color and what's different? What should we make sure we keep, because y'all see these everywhere, and this really is a specimen that needs to stay. But, we don't want to get rid of we don't want to get rid of Japanese maples, but we want to have the best collection we can have. We can't grow every single one of them. We'd like to. So we have to make some choices, and some are better than others. So, if y'all aren't busy with more podcasts and producing plants and doing all the things you do, one of these days I'm going to get you a list just so you can help us go through and say, well, these are no good. And if these are no good, you really need this one that is better that's not there.
I'm all about it. We love it. This place has been so gracious to Tim and I over the years. So one of the reasons we want to do a podcast with you, just to say thanks, because this place has helped us immensely over the years in so many different ways, from plant material, connections, getting us out to speak in front of people when nobody showed up to see us. And then we're like, show up here to a room of 150 people. And you're like, wow, I can't believe the crowd we've got here. This is incredible. So you've always been so supportive of us, even before when we were at the tailgate markets. So we appreciate you.
Well, like I said, you were probably the first nurseryman that came to me for advice. I got to know a lot of nurserymen. I started in July, and so this was January. So this was, within 5 months. And so, I look at y'all kind of like I do my interns when I see where they are. I feel very paternalistic, like I had something to do with, with any of the success. But no, it's just continuing on that legacy we have of the impact. What we do is not about what happens here. It's about how we affect other people.
Well, if you want to support horticulture, this is a great place to support. I'm a huge believer in the JC Raulston. It's a an amazing place, and it's something that has helped us exponentially.
The events here are amazing. The speakers here are amazing. I know coming and listening to Tony A event, listening to Taka Kobayashi, listen to all these awesome speakers that you have that come in.
It's like a concert series for me. I have to check and see who you got, make sure I can clear those dates.
Yeah. And so if someone hasn't become a member or checked out or visited the JC Raulston or came to a speaker series here, they need to do that because there's a lot going on.
I'm a follower, but the YouTube channel is just the JC Raulston, correct? So if they want to find you on YouTube right now, that's the location.
Yep. JC Raulston Arboretum. We'll pull you up, and that's got we've got videos going back for years about all kinds of topics.
We got a few presentations on there.
You've got more than one on there for sure. And I will say, talking about supporting us and seeing what's on there. We do a lot of our programming now. We do we do both in person and online, so people can be here or be online. And we have a winter symposium coming up that you can register for online. We do twice a year in February and August. We do a gardening in the South, which is all for new gardeners, people who are just learning how to garden and have questions. And so we talk about soils, and we talk about pests, and we talk about planting and pruning, kind of those basic things that will give people success.
Incredible. Good luck on your tours next week. I know you're headed out of the country soon and more adventures. We live a little vicariously through you sometimes. We're checking Facebook to see where Mark's at. So I'm excited to see what's next. And man, just keep doing what you're doing. We're big fans here. Well, like I said, it's the fun thing about this podcast is we get to interview people we want to talk to. So it gives us an excuse to come down and bug Mark.
I feel you. When we do plant sales at auctions, people are like, you have such cool plants in the plant sale. I'm like, well, yeah, I get to pick them. So I love them all. But I appreciate that and hope people come visit us. And like I said, we were right that 40th anniversary when we were looking at the next leaders in the industry, because y'all are certainly paving the way, especially with in the sense of specialty nurseries. Those are going away. People don't produce their own plants. They don't do specialties. They look for things in branded pots, which is fine. I'm not knocking that. But
one of our goals is to always stay wildly independent. And that's why the Buchholz purchase made sense for us, because he's wildly independent. And so we kind of just get to do what we want. So.
And that's the way to do it. You can follow everybody and you can be successful that way, or you can go your own way. And if you work hard and you're thinking about it, you can be wildly successful that way as well.
I remember one of your talks with us, and you said, so when are you going to go down to the top 50, top 100 Japanese maples? Top 100. When are you going to only produce the top 100? And Matt and I just laughed. We said, it's not smart business wise, but we're going to keep doing it the way we're doing it.
Keep trying to do everything all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. And I know y'all work, the plant side is the fun part. But y'all have been great businessmen, which again, most nurserymen are not. But there's podcasts that you do. There's the website that nobody thinks that they go to and they don't think about until it doesn't work. And then everybody's like, oh, terrible. So, and I know that you do improvements there and you reach out, and all of these things, are a part of success. You can grow the best plants, but if nobody knows, what are you going to do?
Well, you've done a lot of great things here. Once you went from the assistant director to the director here at the JC Raulston, everyone in North Carolina had a sigh of relief that this place was in good hands, and that the mission and that all the plants and the idea behind the JC Raulston was going to continue on and grow, and that passion was still going to be here. And we can't thank you enough for being here on the podcast today.
Oh, yeah. Huge honor to have you on here. Like I said, you're a big part of our success. So we just want to get you on here. One, to tell you thank you in person, but just thank you for all you do for horticulture. So appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that, but I got to pass it on. It's the staff who does it all. I get to sit in front and take the thanks and look good, but it's all the people. We've got passionate people who believe in our mission, and that's the key.
Well, thank you all so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you hopping on our podcast. If you like this kind of thing, make sure to subscribe to the MrMaple Show on YouTube and all your favorite podcast platforms. You can give us a 5-star review. Make sure to go check out Mark on YouTube as well. He's out there putting out all kinds of great content, and you'll definitely want to see what he's got in store.
Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.